London City briefing for the Citation M2. The information provided in this training video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute professional advice or replace guidance from qualified experts. The creators and presenters are not responsible for any actions taken based on the content of this video. Viewers should always exercise their own judgment and consult appropriate professionals when making decisions. To go to London City Airport, you'll need a training, and aircraft with steep approach capability and an approval for the company. Specifics of London City Airport. Airport regulations. You need PPR and slots allocated by airport coordination. Check the opening hours. Operations by all aircraft permitted when runway is dry or if wet, devoid of other than small areas of water not exceeding 3 mm in depth. Operations will be prohibited when the runway is contaminated by ice or slush to a depth exceeding 3 mm, or dry snow to a depth of 10 mm, or reported friction measurement is reported as worse than medium, provided that this condition shall not apply if there is an appropriate entry covering operation from contaminated runways contained in the relevant flight manual. Not available for single-engine aircraft. Available to fixed-wing aircraft only. Single-pilot operations are not permitted. All aircraft shall only commence startup and taxi when a marshaller is present and available to provide relevant signals. When operating on the aprons, high visibility tabards must be worn and fastened. Ground service crews are responsible for removal of all chocks. Pilots are reminded not to cross the taxiway double white lines when conducting visual inspection of aircraft. Ground movement. Use minimum power when maneuvering on and off parking stands and when entering the runway. Use of minimum power is particularly emphasized when holding at the entry points to the runway and when entering the runway. Parking. Pilots should self-maneuver their aircraft onto the appropriate stand, led in line, and approach the stand as closely as possible. Direction to the final parking position will be provided by marshaller. Under no circumstances may aircraft self-park or taxi without guidance from marshallers. Pre-departure clearance by data link is available. Pilots are to request departure clearance no later than EOBT-10. Warnings. Wind shear. When landing on either runway in strong wind conditions, pilots may experience building-induced turbulence and/or wind shear. Pilots initiating a missed approach due to wind shear should report wind shear go around to alert ATC to possibility of a level bust. Standard missed approach altitude is 2,000 feet. Compass error when using runway 27 hold. Some aircraft types may experience magnetic disturbances, affecting the heading reference system. Pilots should ensure that, when positioned for takeoff from runway 27, the aircraft heading reference is checked against the runway alignment. Flight crew noticing a compass anomaly should notify ATC as soon as possible. Level bust. All standard instrument departures have stop altitudes of 3,000 feet due to presence of London TMA. Use of runways. Minimum runway occupancy time. Departing aircraft. The crew of departing aircraft must inform ATC if they are not ready for departure when instructed by ATC to line up, whenever possible. Cockpit checks should be completed prior to line-up, and any checks requiring completion when lined up on the runway should be kept to the minimum required. Pilots not able to comply with these requirements should notify City Tower as soon as possible. Minimum runway occupancy time. Arriving aircraft. Pilots are reminded that prompt exit from the runway enables ATC to apply minimum spacing on final approach that will achieve maximum runway utilization and will minimize the occurrence of go-arounds. No taxiway to be used as a rapid exit taxiway. Any aircraft that continues landing roll beyond taxiway kilo may infringe the ILS critical area. Pilots expecting to use the full runway length to stop are requested to inform Thames Director on first contact. The end of the runway 09 477M and runway 27 475M touchdown zone is marked with two pairs of white inset high-intensity lights. This visual reference may be lost prior to landing depending on point of touchdown and attitude of the aircraft. If during final approach it is anticipated that the touchdown point will be outside this area, a missed approach procedure should be initiated. Noise abatement procedures for aircraft departing London City and joining controlled airspace are included in the appropriate standard instrument departure. SID instructions. Aircraft departing London City CTR/CTA into the FIR are to climb straight ahead to a minimum of 1000 feet AAL before turning on track unless otherwise instructed by ATC. Aircraft making approaches to London City without assistance from the aisle shall follow a descent path which will not result in its being at any time lower than the approach path that would be followed by an aircraft using the aisle's glide path. Pilots of aircraft carrying out visual approaches to runway 09 and runway 27 shall not fly below altitude 1,600 feet and 1,500 feet respectively until established on the final approach, to minimize disturbance in areas adjacent to the aerodrome. Commanders of aircraft are requested to keep the use of reverse thrust to the utmost minimum, while ensuring the safe operation of the aircraft, to minimize disturbance in areas adjacent to the aerodrome. When landing on runway 09, commanders of aircraft are requested to avoid extending landing gear before odd leg, unless required to do so by operating conditions to maintain the safety of the aircraft. Always check the latest information from the current APE. For the Citation M2, check your AFM. In Supplement 2, the supplement is applicable when conducting approaches with a glide path angle from 4.5 degrees to 5.5 degrees. Having this supplement does not constitute operational approval to conduct steep approach operations. Operational limits. When performing a steep approach, wing flaps, anti-skid system, speed brakes and ground flaps must be operative. Approved approach glide path from 4.5 degrees to 5.5 degrees. Airspeed SV ref. One engine in operative steep approach are prohibited. Maximum airport elevation is 5,000 feet MSL. Minimum demonstrated go-around altitude is 300 feet AGL. Minimum autopilot use height for steep approach is 320 feet AGL. No icing conditions. Performance using the supplement. Determine the estimated landing weight. Check the weather. Determine the maximum landing weight permitted by climb requirements or brake energy for anti-ice off. For example, with zero wind, altitude 0 feet and 20 degrees Celsius, the maximum landing weight permitted by climb requirements or brake energy is 9,900 pounds. Determine the landing distance from 35 feet AGL to stop. VAP and SV ref. Increase landing distance by 250 feet without an operative visual glide path reference system. Multiply landing distance by 1.154-1% downhill runway, 1.434-2% downhill runway. No adjustment for uphill runway. For 8,900 pounds landing weight, SV ref 108 knots, VAP 110 knots and landing distance 2,170 feet. Some operators use APG. You'll need to select the option CFR steep approach. Note that you'll need to cross-check with AFM to get the SV ref. Select in landing options, CFR steep approach. Then compute the datas. You'll have the maximum landing weight and the landing distance at that weight. Also you'll find factored distances. Example, with no wind at 23 degrees Celsius, circled in red. Note that you'll need to cross-check with AFM to get the SV ref. Note, performance data generated by TOLD or CP Calc software is not valid for steep approaches. Use performance data from the supplement. Normal procedures approach. Icing conditions must be exited prior to approach. Landing data. Confirmed. Tour steep approach mode. GTC. Home. Tours. Tour settings. On. Crew briefing. Complete. Avionics flight instruments. Check. Minimums. Set. Fuel transfer selector. Off. Exterior lights. As required. Ice protection systems. Off. Flaps. 15 degrees. Passenger briefing. Complete. Seats. Upright outboard. Seat belts harnesses. Adjusted secure. PAX safety switch. PAX safety. Messages. Check. Pressurization. Delta. 0.5 C by touchdown. Before intercepting the glide path, Landing gear, down 3 greens. Flaps, 35 degrees. Airspeed, SV ref plus 10 maximum. When intercepting the glide path, airspeed, SV ref, speed brakes, extend, glide slope, intercept. Final approach, autopilot and yaw damper, disengage prior to 320 feet AGL. Landing technique, SV ref must be reached at 35 feet. When passing 35 feet, set thrust to idle, flare to achieve a firm touchdown of the main gear. Flaps 60 degrees selected immediately after the nose wheel contact. Use brakes as usual. All engines go around button, push, throttles, take off, pitch, 10 degrees initially, flaps, 15 degrees, speed brakes, check retracted, landing gear, up, positive climb, flaps, as required, flaps 0 degrees, VAP plus 10 kT, airspeed, autopilot, as required. Emergency procedures, engine failure during steep approach, thrust, increase as required, airspeed, maintain SV ref, flaps, check 35 degrees, speed brakes, check extended, rudder trim, as required, throttle, affected engine, off, landing gear, down, pressurization, check 0 differential, autopilot and yaw damper, disengage prior to 320 feet AGL, review emergency abnormal procedures, single engine go around during steep approach. The two first items are memory items, in bold. Note, increasing the throttle above 90% N2 will retract the speed brakes. It may lead to an unstable approach. Recommend a go around in case of engine failure during steep approach. Single engine go around during steep approach. AP trim disc button, push. GA button, push. Throttle, take off. Pitch attitude, plus 10 degrees initially. Flaps, 15 degrees. Speed brakes, check retracted. Airspeed, VAP minimum. Landing gear, up. Flaps, clear obstacles and VAP plus 10. 0 degrees. Airspeed, VAP plus 10 minimum. Airspeed, autopilot, as required. Land as soon as possible. Refer to AFM emergency abnormal procedures. Engine failure precautionary shutdown. Let's go for the approach runway 27. Reducing speed to 200 knots. Intercepting localizer runway 27. Configuration of the aircraft. Using the 3, 2, 1 method. 3 nautical miles before descent. Set flaps 15 degrees. 2 nautical miles before descent. Set gear down. 1 nautical miles before descent. Set flaps 35 degrees. Intercepting the glide path. Speed brakes. Extend. Maintaining VAP. Before landing checklist. (1,000 feet). Stabilized. Minimums. Decision. Autopilot. Disengage. (35 feet AGL). Set thrust idle and flare. Use the brakes and vacate when speed is under control. Vacate the runway. Minimum occupancy time. Perform after landing checklist and taxi to apron and follow marshaller's instructions. Let's go for the takeoff runway 27. Taxi with thrust idle. All checklists completed. Ready for takeoff. Lining up. Left and right side check. Clear for takeoff. Set takeoff thrust. $80 knots. V1, VR, rotate. Positive climb. Set gear up. Approaching 3,000 feet. Intercepting altitude and follow SID and ATC instructions. Thank you for watching.